Jocelyn, you remember Dr. Hannah Salman. She is
Hi.
going to be, she's at the Arab Academic College in Haifa, and she's the chair of the English Language Learning Department. She's going to be speaking with you, but you have not met the lovely Yumana, who she and I have become close as well. I'm not gonna cry, so I'm not gonna get too much into it. You all have become like family and friends to me through, I'm not going anything near what you all are dealing with, but my heart is just there with you all. And so anyway, the lovely Jumana, so I will let both of these ladies introduce themselves in a moment, but you all remember the brilliant, beautiful Dr. Not well, I'm saying doctor, but Jocelyn, she's author, but she might be doctor one day. Author Jocelyn Johnson. She is the author of this lovely book here. As you can see, I'm making all kinds of notes here. And she is in the state of Iowa, which is where I am licensed to teach. And so I'm going to turn it over to you ladies. I'm going to mute myself and I'll jump in if I have some questions or things to add, but I'm just going to leave you all to it.
That will absolutely
I'm going to grab
contribute. So that will certainly contribute if you feel free to jump in and add, or, you know, just to re-emphasize things, and that would be welcomed. First of all, I would like to say thanks for rearranging this. And I would like to thank also the author for really giving us more time to discuss things and to talk about her writings and book. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And we would like, first of all, I will let Jumana to speak first about what she does at college, and then I'll take it from there.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity that you have granted us. We really appreciate it. I'm Jumana Musa. I teach at the Academic Arab College for education. My main focus is fantasy, somewhat children's literature, although just fantasy as a whole is my passion. I also kind of help Dr. Salman with the kind of student affairs issues, and we both are, as you know, kind of passionate about literature as a whole and kind of the symbolic kind of aspect of literature and how it can be a healing kind of tool. So thank you again so much for this opportunity, and looking forward to a productive conversation.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you so much for even being interested in this. It humbles me. I'll just say that you guys are interested enough in Susie Clark's story to even interview me. So thank you. And I dropped my ink pen, so I'm going to be leaving the screen for a second. I'm that girl. Okay, there. I think we're all together now. Well, thank you, and it's nice to meet you, Janana.
So as Jumana has already said, we work together on students' affairs, and I have only been, taking the responsibility of the head of the department since October. So I'm also new in this kind of position. However, I also would like to really use the fact that we are discussing, literature and talking to an author to suggest also ways and means for our students to overcome their reality, which can be very often done through, the frames of fiction. And very often, fiction reflects life, but it also transcends life. So, and this is, of course, one of the basic things that we would like to let our students know when they learn fiction. So beginning, I would like if you could please, Jocelyn, tell us about yourself and your childhood in Iowa.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Salmon. Yeah, my name is Jocelyn, maiden name Hickey. And my married name is Johnson. So Jocelyn Hickey Johnson is the name that I go by. My family roots are right here in Waterloo, and that's one of the reasons I insist on carrying my maiden name, because the Hickey family is one of the first Black families to move here to Waterloo way back in the beginning of basically the whole town. So when Waterloo was just getting up and running, our family was here representing the Hickey family that migrated from the South. So that's my story. I'm the fifth generation here that was born and raised here. My mother was white, so I do have kind of a mixed kind of situation when it comes to culturally, but I do entertain both sides, and I love both. I say Black people, white people, because I sometimes try to walk the line, but we all know that I'm Black. So it's the way it is. That's what America sees, because of the one drop and other things that we won't even go into as far as racial identity, but it is a part of who I am. So I wanted to bring that up. I started writing children's books back in 2005. This is my fourth book. Susie Clark is my fourth. And actually I guess they're all very exciting, but Susie Clark is being a historical fiction, just really gave me lots of room to explore Black culture, what it means to be Black and a front runner. And the pressure that may have been on this little girl was just so exciting to try to find words to put into the story. So this is my fourth book, and yeah, I'm just really excited about that. My first two books were just about family stories that I used from my children's childhood, but it featured a biracial family. It didn't talk about race. The first two books does not talk about race at all, but it shows the family bonded by love, like all families. And it just kind of tells a quick story. The first story is about a little girl's first day of preschool, which was my daughter's story, real life story. And then the second book was about Travis, my son, who couldn't understand that because his sister had a birthday, it doesn't mean it's your birthday too, because everybody would bring Travis gifts too. And my daughter would be like, no, it's my birthday. So I made a story of that, and a lot of people could identify it. And my main illustration in that book is showing the family, the whole family, both sides, because of personal things that have happened to me that was because of racism or just ignorance. I wanted to make sure that our family was shown, Black and white and all together, from the elders down to the young children. So those are my first two books. The third book is a historical fiction that I had to kind of, kind of think of some ideas, like in the story Roots. When you think of the story Roots, you know that some of those scenarios had to be kind of created because we weren't really there. So that's kind of what I did in the book called Ropes in the Kitchen, that my dad and I wrote together. So, and by the way, I do have your book, but I can't find it, Dawn. I had it all wrapped up and ready to go, and now it disappeared, so I got to wrap up another one. I had kids in my car. That's the problem. But so anyway, I digress. But anyway, Ropes in the Kitchen actually does talk about race, and it's narrated by me as a 12-year-old during 1968, when Martin Luther King got killed, and talks about some of the things that went on in my neighborhood and in my household and in our family's history. So that was my third book. And then we're here for Susie Clark. I'm a it really made me try to channel some of my energy towards productive things. And I'm so thankful that I've had these projects to work on. Thank you.
Well, thank you a lot for this exposition. And I mean, we've also learned a lot about the fact that you have such a variety of, writing, and it becomes more interesting for us as listeners. Also, the fact that you mentioned the third story is historical fiction, and it relates to historical moments that are very crucial for African Americans. And you said that the narrator is 12 years old, so it might be considered like an adolescent kind of fiction, which is very, very interesting. For one might be very interesting for our students who are going to become teachers for junior high school. I would like to, before talking about, discussing and exploring your writing as an African American, or as you mentioned it, it's like living at the edge between being white and being African American. I'd like to talk about your hometown. And because, Israeli students may not be familiar with Iowa or the state of Iowa. And so what do you consider unique about the state of Iowa in terms of its geography, in terms of the community, the dialects, that is different in comparison to other Americans, states?
Okay, thank you. Wow, that's an interesting question. Iowa as a whole is known for its farming community. There's a lot of corn that grows here in Iowa. This is where the tall grows, supposedly. It's a native name. Iowa is, I'm not sure, I know the Meskwaki people have a lot of territory.
Oh no. Oh, she's back. Good.
You please unmute yourself, Jocelyn. Jocelyn, we are not hearing you because you need to unmute yourself.
There, every time I touched it, it would just disappear and not let me unmute it. Okay. So sorry about that.
No, not.
There was someone calling on my phone and it interrupted the service. Yeah,
No
I have
worries.
do not
Yes,
disturb
can take
on.
it from.
Yeah.
Can take it from where we stopped. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So Iowa is a corn and a white. Basically, it's a red state here in Iowa. The county that I live in is the most diverse county in the state. And the Black population in Waterloo is, I can't even talk about the percentage, but there are more Black people, more Latina, more Asian, more everybody of different cultures here in our county than anywhere else in the state. We have a Black mayor, and a lot of our city council has recently been elected as a lot of Black members on our city council as well. So the city has taken a really, really great urban type turn. We have an urban farmers market. We have a lot of Black businesses moving into our downtown areas that have never really been accessible before. So my hometown is becoming increasingly diverse and also increasingly lucrative for Black people as a whole here in recent years. And I might add that it was since the murder of George Floyd when the nation took a turn, and we're on another wave right now of civil rights movements, and people are recognizing some of the things that have been needed to be addressed for a long time. So our downtown is filling up with Black business, entrepreneurship, and it's just real exciting to see the way the Black population has been standing up and showing out. The Wall Street Journal reported that Iowa, or Waterloo and Cedar Falls, which are sister cities here in Iowa, were the worst places for Black people to live. And this was back in 2017, I believe. And so ever since then, we have gotten this new Black mayor. And then, of course, like I said, 2020 happened and George Floyd. And so things have been progressively better because of that report. At first, it was hard to hear. We didn't want, no, not Waterloo, is it? Because we like it here, it's great. But obviously we didn't know what we were missing. So I'm thankful for that bad report because it really made a lot of difference in our community as a whole.
Wow, we're happy to hear that things are progressing.
May I jump in really quick? I am not a native of Iowa, but I wanted to say a couple of things that I've noticed since living in Iowa. I only lived in Iowa for 5 years. And I noticed if you watch American television, a lot of times Iowa is considered the Midwestern town, the Midwestern like place. Iowa represents what, you know, hometown patriotic America is supposed to look like and what it's supposed to sound like. So a lot of times when you hear the dialect that's spoken in the state of Iowa, it is supposed to be representative of what you hear on television and how people speak, how Americans speak on television, that Midwestern dialect and that Midwestern town feel and things like that. So I think that that's interesting. Also, another thing about Waterloo, which I think Jocelyn, I keep wanting to say Dr. Johnson, but Jocelyn may not be taking credit for, is there's so much brilliance that comes out of Waterloo. Besides her and other authors, but we also have Nicole Hannah Jones, who is the author of the 1619 Project, which is kind of like that has also been kind of a catalyst of the new civil rights movement and the current cancel culture and banning book culture that has come up in America. Her work from 2020, was it 2020 or 2019?
Yeah, it was one of those years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that came out. She's a native of Waterloo, Iowa. And she received the Pulitzer for her book. So there's so much Black brilliance in Waterloo, Iowa that I found out that I didn't even realize existed. So
Well, thank you for that, for adding that little tidbit about my home state.
I would like now to ask to address some questions about how you discovered, your talent as a writer. So, can you tell us about that?
How I
About how did you discover that you have a talent in writing?
wow, thank you. I think I discovered I had a talent in writing when my best friend um, wrote a book. She wrote a novel. And I was so impressed. I'm like, oh my goodness, my best friend is an author. This had to be way back in 2006. And so, she and I talking, drinking wine in my backyard, we started discussing about how I've never seen a book that featured families like the one I grew up in. So she, being an artist as well, my best friend Shaviva Banks Ferguson is an artist, and she has several murals throughout the city here at public buildings. Jesse Cosby Center, Waterloo Center for the Arts, UNI Rod Library are some of the places that have some of her artwork, and there are many more. But so her being an artist thought, you know what, we could write a book, and she could be my illustrator, and we could like go on tour and do these wonderful things as friends. So I started thinking of some of the stories of my children, and it just really kind of hit home because they were kind of clever and cute stories is what the audience, the people that bought the books were, and it was a niche at that time because they had our first book signing at the college bookstore, and we sold out. We sold over 500 books because so many people could identify with not only the stories but the characters as well. So when that happened, of course, a fire was lit, and I'm like, wait a minute, I have another son, I have another child, I could write another book. So I wrote a book about his little funny stories about how he would complain so much on his sister's birthday that everybody would bring him a gift as well. And so people could identify with that because I think all children need to learn when it's their time to shine, not don't rain on your sister's birthday because you're upset it's not your birthday. So then I thought, maybe I'm kind of onto something. So my father was very, very ill, gravely ill. And some of the stories from our family hadn't been told yet. And I knew I was going to be losing him. Oh, Lord. And so he helped me write the book, the last one. Oh, Ropes in the Kitchen. My heart is in there because I narrated the book as a 12-year-old. And some of the stories helped him in his convalescence actually kind of come to life. He was anxious to tell the next part of the story, and he was anxious to hear what I had written the night before. And every day it made his days better. And so at the end, I'm going to pull myself together here, but at the end, when he was on a ventilator, he thought he wasn't going to attend the first book signing, but God had it so he actually was able to be there. And he had a stamp because he couldn't sign his name. And so I stamped him. I stamped yours too. I got to find that book, Dawn. But anyway, so he had a stamp and he sat there so proudly. He had a trach. He had so many things that he had had to go through just to be there. So that's why I wrote Ropes in the Kitchen, was to keep him inspired and also to capture all these stories from our family, which were well documented because we were here for so long, the Waterloo Courier. And I think my family's always been kind of, I don't know, outgoing, because the Waterloo Courier has done so many articles from the time my great-grandfather started. And what's interesting about this is the fact that the article they wrote about my great-grandfather being born into slavery, I think the first couple lines were, Mr. Hickey's life is very interesting. And I thought, how I don't know, just like it's just a little story, but it's very interesting, and it's like a little more than interesting, I thought. And it just seemed, I think that white Iowa people in the Midwest were basically naive and ignorant to what was going on in the South. It was so anyway, I probably got way off track, but um, Ropes in the Kitchen was written basically to record my family's history for my family. But then it seemed that others were interested locally in the story. So I've been selling them at local bookstores and in the gift shops, and it is on Amazon as well.
Wow, it's so touching to hear about your experience. Thank you for sharing that.
I wasn't expecting that. Come
Yeah.
up like.
And this is actually what we were relating to when we started talking about fiction and how it's another platform through which we can heal ourselves or perhaps reflect our identity and write down our identity.
Yeah.
As Arab citizens in the state of Israel, we tend to identify with African Americans, and their experience of identity is split, and sometimes the experiencing of the so-called double consciousness, the term which is used to refer to how minorities filter the world through the perspective of the dominant culture. And I'm interested to know whether your writing in any way was pivoted by such experiences in your life. Have you experienced that? And was it what you tried to write down?
Yes. As far as my children's book, I kind of stuck with mainstream English, like plain, because it's for children. In Ropes in the Kitchen, I did have to emulate some of the words and use the Black expressions, if you will, the Black language lingo, and because some of the characters in my book spoke in that vernacular, so I didn't want to. I wanted to make it feel like it was natural. So as far as double consciousness, I've lived that life my whole life, and I know what impact certain things will have on certain cultures. What would a white, like for instance, my second book, Travis, It's Not Your Birthday. People, I would notice white people would flip, they're thinking about buying the book and they'll look at these lovely illustrations, and then they'll get to the page where dad is Black and he's sitting on the little girl's bed, or they're all standing as a family, and the white people would kind of like, oh, put the book down. Well, that's not one we want, And I've seen Black people do the same thing, looking through the illustrations and see the white lady there and be like, oh, okay, well, it would be a good book, but why is she in there? So just the different, so I know what to possibly expect. Sometimes I look for it, it's not there. Some people are just like, this is just what I wanted. But there is a double consciousness in America. And whether it's with interracial couples or if it's with even, I'll say, gay people, the first thing a lot of Americans do is when they see a couple of different race or different, just different, they automatically put them in bed, which is unfortunate, but it's the truth, and then that hits a point where they don't like that idea of it or whatever it is. And it's sad to say, but and I probably shouldn't say it in this interview, but I think that's just a part of the quote unquote double consciousness and the way people think or see people for whatever reason, stereotypes possibly. Yeah, so I think I did consider all that in my writing. Double consciousness is always, like I said, been a part of my life. And when you get to certain parts in my book, I kind of know who's going to react and which way.
So, I mean, if we'd like to give a piece of advice to our Arab, listeners at the Academic Arab College in terms of facing, the fact that they also face double consciousness in the Israeli society. I mean, what advice would you tell them in order to overcome those instances where they feel stereotyped or sometimes even, humiliated?
Mm. Well, we were talking about earlier the perseverance and what kind of things you have to, like, for instance, my character, Susie Clark. Sometimes you have to reach down deep inside and find what is in there that pulled you through up into this day, to this point, because you have to go through a whole lot of stuff to even be present right here now. So you have to reach down and find what got you through then, and just count on that to keep you going. Also, you just also want to remember that there's been a lot of struggle always, and there will always be struggle, but you have to just find your inner self and be true to yourself, is what I'd say. Hopefully your family has some guidance for you as well. And from my perspective, my father was always the one who would meet racism with a smile, and it got him through. Some people would say, that's not the way to go about it, but that's the way I deal with it. When I see someone that is not accepting me for who I am, or they look down because, for instance, and I'm sure this happens to you there, I took my granddaughters, who are dark skinned, into a regular restaurant, and I could see there were some seniors there that just looked like they were bothered because we were there. And the way I handle it is I go over and I speak to them and I say hello. They don't want, sometimes they don't even want to speak. They just want to act like they don't see, like, oh, we weren't looking at you strangely. So I guess my advice would be, try being kind, try smiling. And if then for sure, if they were being mean to you because of your differences, then but if they may just have that face that doesn't look nice all the time, so a smile sometimes can help, and it sure can't hurt.
Yeah, you certainly have the soul of an author. I mean, eh, now I would ask Jumana to ask you about children's literature. That's her field of expertise.
Oh,
Thank you so
all
much.
right.
I was kind of really moved with what you said and about your father in particular, so I don't want to go back to it, bring you back to that place. But you also kind of just mentioned how your father, by the way, this is not my question, but uh, because you just mentioned the fact that, in a way, it's almost like your father is like the guiding force for what you do. And at the same time, I saw that Susie Clark's father was kind of also that. So might have might your father have been somewhere in there as well?
Mm. I probably would have to say so. Yes. In the Susie Clark story, he was the one that actually went to court and fought so hard for his children, especially Susie. And yeah, I think, like you said, my father's always been the guiding force. He raised me by himself, and it's all in the story and Ropes in the Kitchen. Um, so he really has inspired me to be who I am. He's always been the one to put me on a pedestal. I was daddy's girl, and I think that in Susie Clark's dad, Dan, not Dan Clark, he Mr. Clark, Alexander Clark, was definitely a forerunner in civil rights, and right at that time where the Reconstruction was just starting, and he actually had some platform to stand on, and he was a very valued person in the community, as my dad kind of was, but in his own certain community. So yeah, I believe that when he sat down and talked to her in the middle of the night to encourage her, I'm sure I reflected on my dad.
I believe so. It shows kind of through your through what you're saying. Now, I wanted to ask you, because it's such an important topic, and one would say like a very complex topic, and you know what to present, what not to present to children. Um, what were kind of some of the challenges you faced in writing a picture book about such a complex topic?
Mm. Well, the main problem that I think I had is the I didn't want to hurt the children's feelings, so I tested it on my grandchildren. I wanted to make sure, and I still feel differently about this. I wanted to make sure that no one was offended. Um, I think that I think Dawn and I may have talked about colorism in the community. So I wanted to make sure there are a couple lines, but I had to ask different people about, was this too harsh? Especially the line that says, "You must be Susie Clark. You have to go home now. Your skin is too dark." That was one line that I really hesitated to put in, and when I read it to children, and they really get upset about that when you get to that part, because that's not fair, and they understand that part. So it ended up being a part that I think is really resonates with children. But I did hesitate putting that line in. And also the meanest part of the book. And then right after that, the teacher says, "And take your family home too. This school has no place for you." And so I think that those lines were the crux of the whole story, to let the young children know that this actually used to happen, that people really did feel that way. So I think that I would have to say that that was the hardest part for me to actually put in. My 17-year-old grandson, he assured me that it was okay. And they call me Big Mama. He's like, "Big Mama, it's really okay. Just put it in there. It needs to be there." So I have to credit him and my other grandchildren for helping me to actually move forward past that part.
Sorry, I also think that you did kind of toe the line like really kind of nicely, because I recall you at one point you mentioned like something about mean people not being mean
Mm,
because they don't know any better, or because they want to be
right.
better but they don't. So it was kind of like a very subtle approach
Mm.
to that issue, I think.
Thank
Um,
you much. You're gonna make me cry again. It's just so good to hear feedback. I haven't heard really much feedback about this book, so it's so exciting to talk to you guys.
and um, I kind of the idea of the seeds, and I saw at the end of the book you mentioned that maybe Susie Clark in particular didn't have that seed, the seeds sewn into her hair, but that it has some historical kind of background that, would justify using that. So I was interested in the idea of the seeds, but how did you balance? Because again, as a children's book, again, as kind of taking all the elements into consideration, how did you balance the use of factual information with fictional elements to create something that is both informative but entertaining at the same time?
Mm. Well, I think to answer that question is, in Black culture, hair means a lot. Hair is a big topic often. Braiding, whether we wear it straight or kinky or nappy or curly or, all of these things. And I know that is something that's always been from the beginning of time. So I thought little girls, little Black girls, little white girls, all girls can identify with how important hair is. as a child and being biracial, and my mother, when she was there, she had no clue what to do with my hair. So there was a neighborhood lady named Mrs. Berry. I love her, and I think every time I think of her, I have to smile because she lined me up. And she had 6 girls, and I would be right after the one that was my peer. Her name was Gwen. She would say, "Come on, baby, let me get you done." So she would pull my hair, and I call this the traditional little Black girl hairdo. And I used to do my girls like this: 2 on the side, 1 on the top, 2 in the back, this ponytails. And so I know hair would reach out and grab anybody that had that experience. And with the seeds, I think that because of the history of, during the Middle Passage, there were lots of things that enslaved people tried to bring along or smuggle onto ships so they'd have a piece of home, and there was nothing else to hold on to. Sometimes they would have either seeds or a piece of fabric or something to give them hope, for the next stage of their life. So yeah, I wanted to bring those seeds and the hair into culture, into the story. And I just thought that would really let everyone relate more, what they had that, and to give hope, and have that hope be passed down from the motherland, because a lot of Black kids think the only history that we have is in being enslaved. So reaching back past slavery into Africa and bringing something from the motherland into her life probably would have meant a lot to her.
May I jump in really quick and piggyback off what Jocelyn said? I love what she just said about hair being so central and vital to the African American community, especially the women, and passing these the idea of passing these traditions down. So most of you all may know my son-in-law is white, and so I have a granddaughter, and a few weeks ago I started doing her hair, and I started braiding it. And she's half white, so her hair is very thin, and it's curly, but it's very thin and kind of fine. But my daughter got emotional. She
Oh,
got
yeah.
emotional, and she had to take a picture and she shared it on Instagram, and she said, when your daughter finally gets the opportunity to get the Black mama hair done,
That's,
it
yeah.
was just, she was so emotional about it. And so with that being said, just to kind of hammer home the idea that this is an important aspect of Black culture and Black community, and putting that in there is just as heartwarming as anything can be.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would
I
like to
wanted
also, just a minute, Jumana, before we also ask more questions about the story. Our students might not be familiar with the figure of Susie Clark, and the first African American woman to integrate schools in Iowa. So can you, Jocelyn, please introduce our audience at the Academic Arab College with this inspiring figure?
Oh, sure. Susie Clark was a 12-year-old girl whose father was an attorney. He was a lawyer, and he also was a barber there in town. And he had built a great clientele doing hair, and he probably had a lot of connections to the school board and other places. So he had these 3 children that were going to a African school, is what it was called. And the African school was up a muddy hill and way far away. And the new school in town had lots of room to play and new books and all that. So Alexander Clark wanted his children to attend the better equipped school and to go away from the African school and actually come to the better school. So he led legislation, and it went to the Iowa court. Actually, no, let's see. His local court turned him down. And so he took it to the Iowa Supreme Court, and they agreed that all children should go to school together. So, but the year before that, Alexander just sent his kids to the new school, and they sent them home and said, this can't be. So that's in the story where Susie says, they don't like us there and they sent us home. So yeah, Susie Clark was a wonderful figure that changed the landscape for everyone in the state of Iowa. She made it so my father, who grew up here, went to school with white kids in the 30s and 40s. And of course, the rest of the country wasn't integrated until 1954, I think, with Brown Birches at the Board of Education. So Susie Clark was a monumental figure, not only in Iowa, but nationwide. And she changed the future at only 13 years old.
Thank you. Before I ask
I
my
hope
next
that
question, yeah, before I ask my next question, I kind of want to go back a bit to the idea of hair. Now, I know it's less than ideal, but when I'm teaching about, for example, everyday use to my first year students, I always go back to the, I mean, it's not the greatest idea, but to John Oliver's segment on black hair and the significance of like the cultural significance of hair. So do you think that's something that should be approached differently, or because we are, you know, outsiders, but it's important to see that Don, you might be muted.
No, I was just thinking that I understand what you're trying to say. You want to make sure that you're telling the kind of right information. I'm not familiar with John Oliver's content on black hair, so I may have to get back to you on that. But Jocelyn may know very well. But I understand your question, Jumana.
Okay, go ahead.
I might have lost connection a bit.
So I don't understand.
Oh.
No, you were muted, but I know Don understood, but I don't. Don, maybe you could translate and tell me what do you mean you don't want to get, because you're outsiders and you don't have black hair. Is that what you're saying? What is the question, I guess, I want to ask? Either one of you can explain it if you know.
No, I just meant if introducing our students to a kind of the I don't want to say cultural baggage, but cultural significance that comes with black hair. Should there be a specific approach that you feel would be the right approach to go about it?
Interesting. Now that's a good question. I would say that of course, if you're talking to students that are young, of course, if they have any experience with Black people, which they probably don't, is there a lot of African descent there where you are? That do they see Black kids regularly? Yes?
No.
Or no?
No.
No. Okay. So hopefully they will know that there's a difference, because of course, Black people have woolly hair because they were closer to the equator, and everybody else it's the dominant gene. That's why white people have a little wave, or people from your area will have. So it all started because of necessity. So yeah, I want them to notice the differences in hair textures and to understand that because there is a difference, that there are, necessity is the mother of invention. So because Black people have hair that's different or stronger or more curly, they have acquired certain skills to manage their hair. I guess, does that make sense if you could explain it that way? And so there is a difference, and there's because Black people have kinky hair. So yeah, you can just say that, and explain it, that braiding is a craft and a thing that's been passed down through generations, and along with the idea of putting seeds or things in your hair to eat or plant later on, if you should be moved from a plantation during slavery. Some people would take seeds from that farm to make sure they had something to start with when they got to the next place. So, and to bury it in, and because Black people's hair is so kinky, it was ideal for hiding things. You could braid pretty much anything in there, that you might need that nobody may not find. So it was a secret of sometimes survival. So.
And not
you could just explain it that.
And not to take anything from John Oliver, because like I said, I don't know what he says about Black hair. I don't even know what research he's done as a white man to talk about like his understanding, his knowledge of, Black hair as a white man. Part of me, as this is from my own educational background, wants to say that it's always good to get the information from the actual folks who live it, right? But also the braiding, right? I think Jocelyn and I talked about how braiding also could contain maps to freedom during slavery days. It could also tell people, in addition to spiritual hymns and spirituals and hymnals, it had maps also to freedom, or which way to go, directions and things like that. And all of these things have kind of, we go from seeds to beads. You see little girls with beads in their hair now. We adorn our hair. These kind of traditions have been passed along in so many different ways, that makes our hair care a site of control, a site of our unique identity and our ability to control how we present our bodies and how we present ourselves to the world. So again, I just wanted to pick up on that, because I mean, even like our hair wraps a lot of times, and I know Black people are not the only ones who wear hair wraps, but there's all kinds of things that can be significant about those as well.
I would like also to relate to another aspect of identity that is, that somehow is similar to the issue of braiding, but I would like to address language. Okay, because this might be a very controversial domain. I mean, if we consider the liberals' suggestion to ban Huckleberry Finn from the curriculum because of the fact that it has a lot of the use of the N-word, and because of somehow it writes down slavery, but they do not want to expose that to the younger generation. And so what is your balance, Jocelyn, in reflecting your experience as an African American, in talking about your African American heritage, and also the struggle, that African Americans were exposed to, yet, being accepted, or let's say using the acceptable language?
Wow. So as far as Huckleberry Finn and any other book, I feel like books shouldn't be banned. They should be out there for everyone to read and review and take their own ideas with the book. You know, it's to open your mind. As far as language, and using the N word, I understand and I know every aspect of that. And as far as my family and my children, I would never allow it in the household. I don't care what they were doing, if they were rapping, talking, whatever, they would have to not say that word. And even though, like I said, I understand it all, you know, they try to tell me that that now my son will tell me that now Black people have reclaimed the word and we use it differently and this and that. No, I don't want to hear it. You know, that's just my personal take. I would never. Of course, I did put it in Ropes in the Kitchen because it was used a lot during my life. As a child, I heard the word often. So I wanted to put that dialect in there so people would understand in what text it was used and in what text it should be offensive or should offend you. So that's my take. And as far as dialect and talk, like I said, I wanted to be true to the culture and say things write things the way that they were said in that particular time of my life. In my books. So yeah, I don't believe in banning books, and I do understand that language can be different, and things like the N word or other derogatory words can be used in different contexts. And I think that it's up to the reader to be well-rounded enough to discern, you know, what it means.
And if we're going back to Susie Clark and as a children's book, how did you go about kind of utilizing age-appropriate vocabulary, tone, language, and so forth to in your approach to the book?
Well, I think I wanted two school systems into one, kind of made it easy for me to define who was good and who was the bad actors in the book. The language that I used, I think the only words that I didn't want to use was integrate and segregate. I wanted it to kind of blend in and they could learn those words later. So I think I didn't have a lot of big words because I wanted it to be a book that a fifth grader could read to their younger siblings. That was my idea when I wrote the book. And all my children's books, I kind of wanted it to be that way. And with Susie Clark, the story ended up being a lot more lengthy than I thought it was going to be. But in order to get the history and to keep the cadence going, I always promote it as a story, bedtime story, because it kind of gets lengthy, and once you get that cadence going, you will find that kids are following along with you, but they're also getting tired because of the rhythm, you know. So when I see kids that they're listening when you ask them about it, they understand it all, but sometimes they look like they're bored. so yeah, I wanted it to be a bedtime story. And I as far as what was the question again? You wanted to know the language. Yeah. I didn't want to put big words in there because I wanted it to stay with a rhythm, and I wanted it to be self-explanatory.
We are also, kind of getting to the end of our interview, but first I would like to hear more about your twist on the story. I mean, there were several stories written on Susie Clark. What is your, how is your story different?
Well, thank you. I think the story that I wrote may be different because I wanted to highlight, and I think I communicated with Dawn about this, is that Black people throughout history have taken things that have carried a lot, of course, on the shoulders. And as far as taking things and making them into better things is something that Black people are known for being able to do. For instance, the first part that hit me that way was, that's what I was going to make Susie love, that muddy trail. Even though it was a muddy trail up the hill, she found things to love about it. And it's like the same thing, for instance, when enslaved people would get thrown pig scraps, the guts, the testicles, those kinds of things became gourmet meals that we still prepare today sometimes in Black families. So the Lemons to Lemonade is a twist that I hope people can see and understand, that it didn't matter how bad things got, it was always going to be okay. You know, grandmother sitting on her bed, it might not happen overnight, but it will be okay. Just that continued hope and perseverance that's in the Black spirit is what I wanted to add to the story. As a Black grandmother, and knowing what it takes to get through some tough times, you know, after living to be this age, I understand sometimes that things don't happen overnight, and that some people are mean, they want to be nice, you know, those types of things are what I hope to add.
Wow, that can be such a good motto for our students this year, especially during this time of crisis and conflict. So no matter how
Yeah.
bad things, can be, we can still see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Are there any more questions, Jumana, that you would like to ask Jocelyn?
No, I think we took a lot of her time, so I don't want to
Yeah.
overstay our welcome.
Oh,
So thank you so much. It has been such a wonderful opportunity and a second experience to me to talk to you. I've learned a lot, and now I have more incentive to read all your books. I mean, I've ordered Susie Clark's book. It's still on its way. I mean, things are, getting very slowly these days in our country, but I'm gonna get it. And as I said and promised, we are going to translate it and send it back to you. And now I have the incentive to read, more specifically, your historical fiction book, Ropes in the Kitchen. It's so
yes.
emotional, and it seems to be, such a great piece of your writing.
Thank you so much. Sorry, I got all emotional. I didn't know that was going to happen when I started talking about it, but thank you so much.
Shouldn't be. I mean, it's natural and it's authentic, and it's coming natural to you, and it must have been so powerful, and this is why it's a good cause for writing.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Thank you so much.
You all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.